Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bloom and Well podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I think is going to make a whole lot of sense to you when you finally hear it. And it's going to explain a lot about why some days you do feel like you can handle anything, like you have all of the energy in the world, all the capacity. And other days, one little thing sends you completely over the edge and into a crash or a collapse. And I want to know, have you ever had that experience? Maybe yesterday someone cut you off in traffic and you were like, ugh, whatever, okay. But today, maybe your kid asks you one single question and then you completely lose it. Or maybe you've had those days where you handled a crisis at work, you handled it so well, you're the one that always works great under pressure. You stayed calm, you figured it out, but the next day you couldn't even decide what to make for dinner without feeling completely overwhelmed and crying. And then you start thinking, well, what's wrong with me? Why am I inconsistent? Why are my emotions all over the place? Why can't I just handle things like a normal person? And today we're going to be talking about that. And specifically, we're going to be talking about your window of tolerance. And once you start to understand this concept, it's going to make so much more sense as to why you feel fully capable some days and other days completely incapacitated. And the good news is that your nervous system is doing what it does, and we can work with that. So let's dive in today. So let me start by explaining exactly what this window of tolerance is in a simpler way. So I want you to imagine that there's this zone, and in this zone, it's like a comfortable temperature range for you. And this is where you feel good, you feel okay. And it's where you can handle life. It's where you can think clearly, you can make decisions, you can cope with stress, you can connect with people. And that zone is your window of tolerance. And so when you're inside this window, you're regulated. Your nervous system is regulated. And you feel like you can do all of the things, right? And yeah, things might be difficult. They might be hard, but you can handle them. You can think through tough problems. You can feel your emotions without being completely overwhelmed by them. But when you go outside of that window of tolerance, you're in what we call hyperarousal. So you end up being in this state of anxiety, of panic, of rage, of overwhelm, and everything starts to feel like too much. And then your mind starts spinning, your thoughts are spiraling, and you can't quite calm down. And maybe that looks like you lashing out at people, or feeling like you're going to explode. And when you end up going below your window of tolerance here on this other end, you're in what we call hypoarousal. And that's where the nervous system starts to shut down. You go emotionally numb, you get a lot of brain fog, you can't think, you can't move, it's harder to make decisions, and everything in life just feels either pointless or impossible, and you just feel done with everything. So I want you to think of it like a thermostat range that we have here, okay? And your comfortable temperature here is between, say, 68 and 72 degrees. And so when you're between that 68 and 72 degrees, you're fine, you're comfortable, that's where you're happy. But say it gets up to 85, okay? So you're well past this 72. And then you get grumpy and irritable, right? That's that hyperarousal above your window of tolerance. But if it starts to drop down below 50, you're freezing, right? You can't move. You just want to shut down. You want to hide under a blanket. You don't want to go anywhere. You just kind of want to ball up and not deal with anyone, not deal with anything. Your nervous system works the same way. So when you are in that window, you're good. Right? When you're outside, you're either too hot, too cold, you're just not feeling okay. And it's important to remember that everyone's window is different, and your window can change depending on what's going on in your life, whether that is mental, physical, or spiritual things that are going on. So a few years ago, when I was in the worst state of my burnout and I was bedbound for almost a year, my window was tiny. Okay, like so small. Things that would be, normally no big deal, like me turning over in bed or me standing up or sitting up, or someone texting me or me trying to drink out of a glass of water would send my body into overwhelm. And once I started getting out of the bedridden state and I started getting into like the couch-bound, house-bound, I was moving up, I was up and moving and more around my house, but still not really going outside. I remember I was trying to make a smoothie and I had spilled some coconut milk, and it was a whole can of coconut milk. And it only took a few minutes to clean up, right? It did not take that long to clean all of that up. But I literally sat on my floor and cried for almost 10 minutes, hyperventilating, thinking that it was the end of the world. Not really thinking, but more so feeling that it was the end of the world. And, I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop myself. It just felt like I was literally crying over spilt milk, just coconut milk. And I was trying to figure out, like, what is wrong with me? Why am I crying for this? This is insane. Like, all you have to do is clean it up. It takes 2 seconds. But nothing was wrong with me. Okay, my window of tolerance was so narrow that even the smallest thing was pushing me outside of it. And compare that to a day or a year before or even after, when I was doing so much better, right? I remember a couple of years ago when I was in a healthier state, and I had a flat tire on the side of the highway in the rain at 2 a.m. It was fantastic. But you know what I did? I had someone help me and change the tire. I didn't panic. I didn't freak out. I didn't have a meltdown. Was it stressful? Of course. But it was handled, right? So it was the same person, but 2 totally different responses. And the difference was the size of my window of tolerance. Okay, so when I was sick versus when I was healthy. So now you might be wondering, okay, that makes sense. I understand the whole window of tolerance. So what makes it get so small? And you might be thinking getting sick makes it small, because I kind of referred to me being sick. But it's important to remember our window isn't fixed, right? I did say that everyone's window is different, but it's not fixed. It can change. It fluctuates. So when you are really rested and you're healthy and you're supported and regulated, your capacity for stress, that window of tolerance, gets wider and wider, and you can handle more. But the more you get stressed without discharging it or handling it in a healthy way, the more exhausted you are, the more depleted you are, the less healthy you're eating, the less healthy social interactions you have. All of these things, mental, physical, and chemical stresses and spiritual issues, shrink that window of tolerance, and it just gets more narrow and narrow and narrow, and suddenly everything feels like too much. So let's talk about what actually narrows that window. One of the first things that I see is, like in most of my clients, like 99% of my clients, is that they are not sleeping well. And if they are sleeping, they're not sleeping deep enough. When you sleep deeply and when you sleep long enough, your nervous system has time to reset and your body has time to heal itself. So when you're not getting quality sleep, that window is going to shrink because it's not able to deal with all the stress that you dealt with that day. And that's why everything feels harder when you're exhausted too. Number 2, we have not eating enough or blood sugar crashes. So when your blood sugar drops, your body is going to go into stress mode. Your nervous system's job is to keep you alive and to keep you safe. And so when it thinks there's not food available, or again, your blood sugar crashes, which is telling it, hey, we need to eat right now, it goes into stress mode and it releases stress hormones to elevate your blood sugar because it thinks you're starving. And so again, that window shrinks some more. And that's why you might feel really anxious or lightheaded or really grumpy. That's where we get the term hangry, right? When we haven't eaten. Number 3 is chronic stress. So if you've been living in a really high stress environment or a stress mode for weeks, for months, years, maybe even decades, your nervous system is always on alert, even when you're sleeping. And so that window is just going to continue to shrink and shrink and shrink until it can't shrink anymore, because the body thinks that there is always a danger around you. And number 4, we have past trauma. So if you are someone who has experienced trauma, big T or little t trauma, especially childhood trauma, your nervous system learned the world isn't safe. People aren't safe. I can't trust anyone. And so your window starts to get smaller in that case too, again, because your body is always on guard. We have number 5, being stuck in survival mode for too long. And this is kind of like an umbrella category where a lot of different things can fit under this, right? So if you're someone who carries everything for everyone, you're always the responsible one, you're always just taking on all of these responsibilities, they are going to stress you. They're going to keep your nervous system in that fight or flight. If you're never resting, if you're not taking care of yourself, but you're taking care of everyone else, you're always hustling, pushing through, your nervous system is constantly, it's like you're holding down the gas pedal 24/7, even when you've run out of gas. And eventually that window is going to get so small that you can barely function. And that's exactly what happened to me. And number 6 is carrying too much responsibility, right? So when you feel like everything depends on you, right? You can't say no. There's no boundaries. You're holding everyone else's emotions, everyone else's problems. You've probably been told, hey, you're a great listener. And then people vent to you all of the time. Your nervous system is activated all of the time, right? And there's no room left in your window for anything else. So going back to my story for a minute, when I was bedridden for 8 months, my window was almost non-existent, as you can imagine, because I did mention, having issues just turning over in bed. And I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't have conversations, I had to have earplugs in 24/7 because literally my cat's walking up and down the hall or hearing someone turn a water faucet on or a cabinet closing was too overstimulating, and would literally cause me these electric shocks like to go through my body because my nervous system was so over it. Even thinking was too hard, right? So someone walking into my room felt like I was being attacked, and my nervous system would overreact. And I would lie there and just exist, but my heart would be like this for hours and hours and hours. And again, if anything happened, a loud noise, a text message, someone needing something from me, I would either completely shut down or have a panic attack. And I got to a point where I was having 7 or 8 panic attacks a day, and there was no in between. And I was not anywhere inside my window at all, even just being bedridden. I was either way above it with anxiety, panic attacks, the palpitations, and clamminess. I would get that too. Or I was way below it, right, where I couldn't move. My legs, it literally felt like I was paralyzed. My legs wouldn't move. I couldn't think, and I just felt totally numb emotionally. And I didn't understand what was happening. I thought I was broken, and, the doctors were missing some crazy diagnosis that had never been diagnosed before. And I was Googling and on Reddit and on these other forums and trying to figure out what's wrong with me. These doctors are not figuring it out. And it was stress, right? My nervous system was so dysregulated from too much stress that my window completely collapsed. There was no window anymore. So let me explain what it looks like when you're outside your window, because I think this is going to help you recognize it in your own life. So we talked about that window. When you're too far above it, you're in hyperarousal. If you're too far below, it's hypoarousal. So above that window, you're going to feel your heart racing. You can't sit still. You're a very restless person, constantly busy, maybe snapping at people over little things, angry. Your thoughts are just always buzzing. You can't turn off the chatter no matter what you do. And everything feels like an emergency. Everything is urgent. Like you have to fix it right now. If someone texts you or calls you or emails you, or if you get a letter in the mail and you're opening that letter, it feels like I have to stop everything and handle this right now. And you might feel anger. You might feel a lot of rage or even panic. Or just this overwhelming sense of like, I have to do this, but I can't do this at the same time. And when you're in the lower end below your window, you can't get off the couch, right? You can't get off the couch. You can't move. Your brain is foggy. You can't think. You can't have conversations. You're forgetting everything. You feel really numb and disconnected from other people, maybe even disconnected from your body. And you feel like you're watching your life from the outside, like from a third person perspective, like it's a movie playing on a screen and you're not really in it. And then you can't make decisions, even, simple ones like deciding what to have for breakfast or lunch or dinner, or deciding what to wear for that day, or, deciding what to do first on your to-do list. Like everything just feels pointless. And you want to sleep, you want to stare at the wall, you don't really want to do much of anything. And I want to say that neither of these are bad. So I don't want you to feel guilty if you see yourself in either the hyper or hypo state. And your body's not necessarily doing anything wrong. It's doing exactly what it is designed to do, and that's to keep you alive. So when you're in that hyperarousal state over here, your body is trying to fight or run from a threat. And when you're in the hypoarousal, your body is trying to protect you by shutting down. Both are absolutely survival responses, and your nervous system is trying to keep you safe, right? It's trying to keep you alive, but it's not clocking that there's not imminent danger. There's not a bear chasing you, right? It's a work email, okay? And that work email is not going to jump through the screen and attack you. It's an email. So let's talk about a client for just a moment, and we're going to call her Lisa, just to change her name for privacy reasons. So Lisa came to me and she was super burnt out, super exhausted, and could not understand what was wrong with her. Very similar to myself, right? When I was talking about, panicking, thinking there's some crazy mystery diagnosis the doctors just haven't found out about yet. She was in that same feeling, right? And she was frustrated because some days she was okay, and she could kind of push through and take care of her responsibilities and do what she needed to do. She could work, she could take care of her kids, she could cook dinner, and everything would be okay. But there were other days when she couldn't even get out of bed. She would crash. And on those days, she would feel so guilty because she knew that she had things to do and she had responsibilities, but she just couldn't. Her body wouldn't go. And I remember asking her, do you notice a difference on the days you can't get out of bed? And not necessarily do you notice a difference, do you notice what is different, right? Like, what about your life or your days when you're bedbound is different, right? And I remember her telling me, well, it's usually after a really hard week, or after I've been pushing myself a lot, or after something stressful happens. Exactly, right? She just wasn't picking up on that pattern yet. So her window was becoming more narrow and more narrow and more narrow because she had been spending so much of her time with all of these responsibilities, but not spending any time pouring back into herself. And that decreases that window until you get to, again, hyper or hypoarousal. And once she started to understand that, everything started really shifting for her, and she wasn't blaming herself anymore, and she was starting to pay more attention to when she was getting close to the edge of her window. And by doing that, and by gently moving outside the window of tolerance temporarily and then back into that window, she started building up her capacity again. And I want to talk a little bit about how to recognize when you are outside of your window, because most of you have been outside your window probably for a very long time, but probably for so long that it feels normal, right? You don't even realize you're outside your window. You just don't feel good. And you think, well, this is just life. I'm just getting older. This is how I am. I'm just an anxious person. I'm just tired all of the time. But I'm here to tell you that's not who you are. That is a dysregulated nervous system. Okay, so let's talk about some signs that you can look out for. When you are over here and you're in that hyperarousal state above your window, again, your heart's going to be racing, seemingly for no reason, right? You're not going to be able to sit still. If you do try to have some downtime, maybe you're taking a bath or you're trying to read a book or watch a movie or whatever it may be, you're really restless. You're constantly fidgeting with things. You're snapping at people, maybe your husband, your kids, your coworkers, and your thoughts are just constantly spiraling into this guilt, into this shame, and maybe worrying a lot about what's going to happen tomorrow or what's going to happen next week, or ruminating on the past, like I should have said that differently, I should have done that differently, or all of these what ifs. And then everything feels urgent. So maybe you get a text message that comes through and you can't just put it down and leave it for the rest of the movie. You have to text them back right now, or step out for a phone call, or heck, even leave to go take care of it. And you become really resentful and irritable, and everything just gets on your nerves and gets annoying. And you just feel super overstimulated, right? And then you have trouble sleeping because your mind won't slow down. So when you're under that window and you're into that hypoarousal, that's when you can't move. You can't get off the bed. Your brain's foggy. You cannot think clearly. You can't remember things. You're watching that movie and you can't remember what the main character's name is. Or maybe 2 scenes ago something happened that was important to the plot and you don't remember. Maybe you feel really numb and like you're disconnected from your body, right? Or you can't even pick which movie to watch or what snacks to eat while you're watching a movie. And then you start wondering, well, why am I even watching this movie? This feels pointless. And you don't want to talk to anyone. You don't want to see anyone, be around anyone. You feel so exhausted, no matter how much you sleep or rest. And then you probably also feel really depressed, but you don't know why. And a lot of you are probably confused and you're thinking, well, I see myself in both of these. Like, I'm experiencing both. Sometimes I'm anxious and wired. Sometimes I'm completely shut down. Yes, that is completely normal. That is very common. A lot of people who are in chronically stressed states or environments, you're going to swing on opposite ends of that spectrum, right? You're either spinning out way above your window or collapsed below it. There's not really a lot of middle ground when you're actually inside of that window of tolerance. You're just always outside of it on one end or the other. And by consuming our content here, that's what we're trying to change, right? So let's talk about what it feels like to be inside that window of tolerance so that you know what you're aiming for. So when you are actually inside that window of tolerance, you can think clearly, right? You can process your emotions. You can feel anger or sadness or frustration or disappointment without being overwhelmed by them. And you can handle stress without falling apart, right? Without completely crashing out or collapsing and having what feels like a meltdown or a breakdown. And you can make good decisions, right? You can make healthier decisions, easier decisions. And you can start to connect with people. You talk to people more. You go see people more. You're more interactive in conversations. And you feel present in your body and in your life. And things might be hard, but again, you can cope, you can do it. And that's what regulation feels like. And I know for some of you, it has been so long, so long, that you don't remember what that feels like. But it is possible, I promise you. If I can pull through being bedbound for almost a year and being couchbound and housebound for 3 years, back to living a normal life again. Anyone can do this. Anyone. And all of this information I'm giving you is going to make it a lot faster and easier than the process I went through, because I didn't have anyone to tell me what to do or hold my hand through it. So, but I was able to build my window of tolerance, and I've helped other women do the same. And I know that you can do this too. So your window of tolerance can expand, okay? Like I mentioned, it is not fixed. You're not stuck with a tiny window forever if you decide to make some changes. But if I'm being honest with you guys, it takes time and it takes consistency. You have to put effort into yourself, into your health. You have to invest time into your recovery. It's not something you're going to do in one breathing exercise, one EFT session, one coaching session. You're not going to suddenly have a wide window. I wish it worked like that, but unfortunately it doesn't, right? So think of it like building muscle, right? You don't go to the gym once and then suddenly you have all these big, strong muscles, right? You have to go consistently. It takes dedication, it takes time, and slowly they get stronger and stronger. And your nervous system works the same way. Small, consistent steps over time, that window is going to expand more and more and more. So the first thing that you can do is nervous system regulation practices. So any of the exercises or the meditations that you see on this channel, the EFT, the breath work, anything where we're talking about somatics or grounding exercises, all of these things help to regulate your nervous system and expand that window. And you have to understand, these exercises are not just luxuries. They're not just nice to have if you have time. These are requirements if you want to heal, okay? And the key is consistency. Again, a few minutes every single day is better than just a solid hour once a week or once every other week. Because your nervous system, in order to retrain your brain and change how it processes all of the stress and how it functions and its default settings, all of the programming that's in there, you have to train it and learn over and over and over again that it is safe, that it can relax, that it's okay to gently expand that window. Okay, that it doesn't have to be on high alert all the time. Number 2, it's important to meet your basic needs. I know that sounds simple. I know it sounds so simple, it sounds too simple, but I'm serious. Your nervous system cannot stay calm, cannot regulate if your basic needs are not met. If you're not sleeping enough, if you're not eating regularly, if you're not eating enough protein and fats, if you're not moving your body gently. I'm not talking about intense exercise. We're talking about slow, gentle exercise. If you're not drinking enough water, if you're not getting outside, these are not self-care, okay? These are not like, let me just add these to my routine because this is what like people do when they have extra time. This is survival. This is like your basic needs for living and taking care of yourself. And when that's not met, that window is going to shrink. Okay? And I can remember when I was, again, burnt out and bedridden, I would skip meals. I couldn't even brush my teeth some days because it was too much. Like literally, I just had no energy. And I mean, I was too tired some days to even pick up a glass of water and drink. From water, it just felt so heavy. My body was just shutting down. And again, my blood sugar was all over the place. It was crashing constantly. I was having panic attacks constantly. And once I gently and slowly started working with, for me, I had to do the nervous system regulation techniques first. And then when I started getting a little more capacity, I could eat more consistently, I was drinking more consistently, etc. So I started taking care of my body better. That window started expanding and my nervous system was calming down a little bit, right? We also want to work on reducing chronic stress. I'm not saying get rid of all stress completely forever, because that's not realistic. Life is always going to be changing. It's going to throw stress your way, whether you are ready for it or want it or not. But if you are living in chronic survival mode, if you are always overwhelmed, you're always carrying everyone else, you're always pushing through and hustling, that window is going to stay small, my friend. So you have to sit down, you have to look at your life and assess and ask yourself, like, what can I let go of? What can I take off of my plate right now? What can I say no to? Where am I carrying responsibility that isn't mine? And I know this is hard. I know. Because you're probably the person that everyone depends on, or maybe you're in a tight financial situation or whatever it may be. But if you don't do what you can and think outside of the box for solutions, and you don't reduce that chronic stress, your body will force you to by shutting down. That's what happened to me. At the time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is some mystery illness. I just happened to be bedbound overnight. What's happening? I had way too much stress in my life, and I was taking on everyone else's problems and not pouring into myself. It was a long time coming, and a lot of people don't see it until way too late. And so my point in all of this content is I don't want you guys to have to learn the hard way, okay? I did not choose to slow down. I did not choose to take care of myself in the way that I should have at the time. But because I didn't, my body made me. It gave me no choice. We also need to think about co-regulation. So this is huge. This is the most important part to your recovery after you taking care of yourself, is being around other people that are regulated and healthy or are working towards that. Okay? You are the company you keep, right? Your nervous system heals in relationship with other people, healthy people. Okay? So when you're around someone who is very calm, who's very regulated, their nervous system helps yours calm down too, which is why we call it co-regulation, right? This is why therapy is so beneficial too. One of the reasons, not the only. It's why coaching helps, communities, groups, right? So you need people who can hold space for you while your nervous system learns that it's safe. You're not going to be able to fully and successfully regulate it in isolation by yourself. And if you are someone who's probably bedbound or couch or housebound, you might have been trying to do this for years, right? But I'm telling you, as someone who lived through it, there is going to come a time when you might make some progress, but you're going to hit a wall, this plateau, because you need outside support. And I remember when I was bedridden and my window, again, it was non-existent. And I was doing EFT tapping, I was doing yoga nidras, and I was doing a lot of breath work because I couldn't really get out of bed, but I got to a point where I could sit up. And I was eating better, I was eating more regularly, and I started asking for help, which was crazy for me because my entire life has been I don't need anyone. I'm independent. I don't ask for help. I'm the person people rely on. And as I started to do these things, instead of trying to do everything myself, slowly, very slowly, mind you, that window started to get a little bit bigger. And at first, I could handle being in the room with someone for maybe 10 minutes before I started feeling overwhelmed. And then it was 20, and then an hour. And at first I could only handle one small task a day, and then 2, and then 3. And when it came to cooking, my body, because of the dysautonomia and stuff, I could not, in the pots, I could not handle heat. I couldn't cook at my stove. So I would have to literally put whole sweet potatoes, a whole pot roast, and peeled onions into a crock pot and let it cook because I couldn't even cut up my sweet potatoes. And then a couple of months later, I started getting to where I could cut up my sweet potatoes and I could actually season it beyond just salt. and it was fantastic. And then finally, I could cook at my stove and I could scramble some eggs for breakfast. Yes, it took me time, but yes, my window expanded. And now I can handle stress without falling apart. I can cook in my kitchen in the summer. Who'd have thought that was a possibility? Because I promise you, I didn't for a long time. I can have the hard days without collapsing. And I can feel emotions without being completely destroyed by them. And no, my window's not perfect, okay? I'm still growing every single day. I'm still making progress every single day because that's what we are as humans. We are constantly supposed to be growing and changing and learning. But it does still narrow when I start to get too stressed, or I'm not taking care of myself enough, or if I'm not sleeping well enough. But I promise you, it's so much wider than it used to be, and that is possible for you too. So let me give you some quick practical things that you can do right now when you notice that you're outside of that window. So if you notice that you're above it and you're in that hyperarousal, maybe you're anxious or overwhelmed, or your thoughts are just constantly racing, we want to focus on long exhales. So in through the nose for a count of 4, out through the mouth for a count of 6 or even 8 if you can. What this does is it tells your nervous system to calm down by chemical signaling. Okay, so if someone tells you to calm down, do you calm down? No. When the nervous system is panicking like that, it's not going to process what you tell it to do. It's going to process the action and the chemical signaling. So show it that it's safe. And doing those breathing exercises is one way that you can do that. You can also put your feet on the floor and kind of push those feet into the floor and just focus on feeling that ground beneath you. And it's going to help you get back into your body. And one of my favorites, you can put cold water or an ice pack on your chest. This activates that vagus nerve and really helps you calm down. For me, that was not ever really enough for me, I'm going to be honest with you, because I was in such a hyper-aroused state when I was having the panic attacks 7-8 times a day. And so what I would have to do, it's a little dramatic, but it worked. I would take a really, really big bowl and I would put water in it and a bunch of ice cubes. Like I would have ice trays ready to go, and I would get a bunch of ice cubes, put them all in that bowl, and just dunk my head in there and hold my breath for as long as I could. And then it sounds crazy unless you do it and it works for you. But as soon as I would finally get to where I just had to come up for air, I would be like, oh, okay, this is life. I'm here. I'm okay. Why was I panicking again? And it was crazy because it was like literally flipping a switch. And it worked for me though. And it's worked for some of my clients as well. But I wouldn't do something that extreme unless you know you can handle that. Start with just like a cold, damp cloth on your chest, and then maybe working into an ice pack, and then, slowly building, because it can be very intense to do things like that. Now, if you're down here on the lower end and you're in that hypoarousal state below that window, and you're feeling really numb or shut down or you can't really move, I know it's going to sound silly, but gentle movement. So when I was in a bedridden state, I couldn't exercise, or so I thought, but I started doing what I could. So some things that I did when I was stuck, just like some calf raises, right? Like not standing up and doing them, but just laying in bed and kind of flexing my feet. That's all I did. It sounds silly, but you continue to build up your tolerance and do more and more activity. And another thing that I would do when I was bedbound is yin yoga. So again, you want to do really light, gentle motions. If you aren't familiar with yin yoga, essentially I would kind of roll myself into a pose and lay there for 3 to 4 minutes and just breathe into that pose and then shift into a different one. And in the beginning, I could only do 2 or 3 poses, okay? And then I worked up to doing like 45 minutes of this. And when I tell you it changed so much for my body and my nervous system, it truly, truly did. But if you don't want to do that, or maybe you can't yet do that, just wiggle your toes or your fingers as much as you can and then rest. Or roll your shoulders, right? Roll your neck, different directions. Stretch your body, stretch your chest open, kind of wake that body back up with just a little bit of light movement. You can also try calling or texting someone that you know is a safe person to talk to. Even if you don't talk, just sending them that text message or a picture or a meme or something can help you feel connected to another person. You can also do something that requires just a little bit of focus, right? So fold a towel, just one towel, or wash one dish if you can. What you're telling your brain when you do this, because I know it sounds silly, but what you're telling your brain is, hey, we can do small things. And a lot of the times what ends up happening is you do one, and then you're like, I could do another, and you do another. I could probably do a third one, and then you do a third one, right? It doesn't always happen like that, and that's okay. The goal is not to be perfect or to get everything done 100%. The goal is to just start noticing, right? Start noticing, I can do this. I can move my body. I'm going to be okay, right? Or, okay, well, hey, yeah, I'm below my window. I'm in shutdown. That's why I can't think or move. Just accepting where you are, noticing where you are, is going to increase that window a little bit more, right? Everything that you do to widen that window is going to accumulate, right? It's going to add up and you're going to increase more and more and more. So continue noticing. Okay, so let's recap real quick. Your window of tolerance is that zone where you feel really regulated and capable and safe and you can communicate clearly, right? So when you're outside of that window, either too high or too low, everything starts to feel too much. It feels impossible. And yes, your window can narrow from stress, from exhaustion, from trauma, chronic overwhelm, illnesses, carrying too much responsibility, mental, physical, chemical, emotional, spiritual stressors. But that window can also expand by inputting things, filling your cup, right? So through nervous system regulation, meeting your basic needs, reducing chronic stress, getting support. Your nervous system is working with the resources that it has. And right now, your window is probably really, really narrow because you've been in survival mode for so long. But it does not have to stay that way, I promise you. So if you are realizing, hey, I have been living outside of my window for months, maybe for years, and I need some help, I want you to know that support is available. We have just opened a new Facebook group that is going to be a free community for you guys, a free support group. And we also have plenty of resources on our website, more content here. All of these things, when you are exposing yourself to this type of content every single day, and you're exposing yourself to these type of people here in this community every single day, that is going to expand that window of tolerance, okay? Bit by bit by bit. Your nervous system is going to feel safe. You're going to get those tools and the support to regulate it, not just to manage your stress in that moment for 10 minutes. Because you were not meant to live or to exist with a tiny window of tolerance, right? With all this fatigue, with all of these weird mystery symptoms that come up, or the anxiety or the panic attacks, right? You were built for so much more, I promise you. And I also want to say, God's not leaving you behind. I know it probably feels like that when you're so far in it and you are either really anxious or numb. Regardless of what opposite end of the spectrum you're on, it can feel like that. But I promise you, God's given you a purpose. And regardless of why you're going through this, I cannot tell you why. But regardless of why you're going through this, you are meant to come out on the other side, I promise. So if this episode was beneficial for you, if it's helped you in any way, I would love it if you would give us a follow, subscribe, like, share, comment, regardless of what platform you are on. We would love to hear from you, to know what you took away from today's episode. And always remember, take care of yourself, my friends, and we will talk to you soon.